I froze. Tyler laughed. "Mom, leave him. Not everyone can be a go-getter." The table erupted in a soft wave of chuckles. My parents didn't defend me. They didn't even look uncomfortable. It was normal to them. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I told them I wasn't hungry anymore. My mom said, "Stop being dramatic." My dad added, "See, this is why things don't work out for you." I walked out without another word. The cold air outside hit me like a slap, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that house. I told myself I was done trying. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. I didn't know it then, but the world was about to shift under their feet. And mine. Less than 48 hours later, I got a call from a lawyer. He said he needed to discuss something related to my late grandparents. Something time-sensitive. At first I thought it was a scam. My grandparents had been gone for years and nobody ever talked about them. But something in his tone, calm, precise, made me hesitate. He asked if I could come by the next morning. So I did, and that decision changed everything. The lawyer's office was in an older building downtown, the kind with narrow hallways and walls lined with framed degrees. I expected someone stiff, someone who would talk down to me the same way my parents always did. But the man who greeted me, Jonathan Hale, looked at me with a strange mix of relief and caution, as if he'd been waiting for this meeting longer than I could understand. He shook my hand firmly and said, "Eric, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, have a seat." The room felt heavier once the door closed. He opened a thick file and slid a stack of documents toward me. "These," he said, tapping the top page, "concern a trust established in 1984 by your grandparents." I blinked. "A trust for who?" His expression didn't change. "For you." I laughed once, quietly, thinking he must have made a mistake. My grandparents loved me, sure, but a trust? Nobody had ever mentioned anything like that. My parents would have brought it up at least once, probably to guilt-trip me or hold it over my head. But they'd said nothing, ever. "Are you sure?" I asked. He nodded. "Your grandparents created a financial trust specifically in your name. It was designed to remain untouched until certain conditions were met. And those conditions are," he folded his hands, "you turning 30 and the trustee, me, confirming you're capable of handling it independently." I stared at him. Why wouldn't I be capable? He hesitated. Just for a second. "Your grandparents believed your parents might try to influence or manipulate the funds. They wrote explicit instructions that your mother and father were not to be informed." My pulse kicked up. "Why?" He opened the file further and revealed a letter with my name on it. "They included this for you. I think it might help you understand." My throat tightened as I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakably my grandmother's. Sharp, graceful loops I hadn't seen since I was a kid. The moment I unfolded it, her voice echoed in my memory. "Eric, if you're reading this, then you're old enough now to understand the truth." The words blurred for a second before sharpening again. "We've watched the way your parents treat you. We know you aren't given the same opportunities or support as your brother. We fear they see you as less than you are, and we refuse to let that belief shape your future." My chest felt weighted, anchored in place. "So we built something for you, something they can't touch. Something to help you stand on your own when the time comes." Below the letter was a summary of the trust's assets. At first I thought I was reading it wrong. $9.7 million. Investments, land, accounts, all managed quietly for decades. My grandparents had been far wealthier than anyone knew. Or maybe everyone knew, except me. I looked up, stunned. This can't be real." "It is," Jonathan said gently. "And all of it becomes yours the moment you sign the activation documents." I leaned back in my chair, trying to breathe. My mind raced through every memory of being called a disappointment, every holiday spent ignored, every time Tyler's achievements were celebrated while mine were brushed aside. They had kept this from me. Not a mistake, not an oversight, a deliberate secret. "Did my parents know about this?" I asked quietly. Jonathan hesitated again. "Your grandparents instructed that they were not to be notified. But your parents requested information from me twice, years ago. They suspected something existed, but I told them only what I was legally allowed to say, that I had nothing to share with them." The room tilted. "So they tried to find out?" "Yes, but they never succeeded." My hands curled into fists on my lap. All those years they treated me like I was less worthy, less capable, less everything, while secretly trying to gain access to something meant for me. Jonathan slid the last set of papers toward me. "Take these home, review them. When you're ready, we can proceed." I left his office in a fog. The city noise felt distant, like I was underwater. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring at the folder beside me. For the first time in my life, I held something my parents couldn't diminish, something they didn't control, something they tried to find but never could. When I got home, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. There were bank statements, investment summaries, legal instructions, letters from my grandparents. Every page told a story my parents had buried. And as I read through it all, a fire started inside me, a slow, steady burn of clarity. They didn't just underestimate me. They tried to erase my future before I even knew it existed. I wasn't going to let that stand. Not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, surrounded by documents that felt too heavy for a single person to hold. Every page was a reminder of two truths I never expected to learn in the same day. My grandparents loved me enough to protect my future, and my parents despised me enough to keep that future hidden. Around 6 in the morning, I finally pushed the papers away and leaned back in my chair. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control, not over everything, but over enough. Enough to shift the ground beneath my family's feet. I opened my laptop and began researching every name, address, and account number listed in the trust. My grandparents hadn't just left money sitting in a bank somewhere. They had built an entire financial ecosystem. Rental properties, long-term investments, land purchased decades ago that had quadrupled in value. There were handwritten notes from my grandfather detailing why each investment was chosen, what it was meant to become, and, this part hit me the hardest, why he believed I was the one who would know what to do with it. They saw something in me my parents never bothered to look for. By mid-afternoon, I had a plan. A real one. Not some daydream built on anger, but a practical, legal, step-by-step path to reclaim what was mine. Jonathan had said I could activate the trust the moment I was ready. I was ready. I called him and asked if he could meet the next day. His voice carried a smile. "Of course, Eric. I'll have everything prepared." After hanging up, I thought about my parents. Part of me wanted to drive straight to their house, slam the documents on the table, and watch their faces crack. But another part of me knew that this moment wasn't about them. It was about me stepping into something that had been waiting decades for me to find it. Still, the anger kept circling in my head. Why didn't they tell me? Why hide it? Why let me live small while a future built specifically for me was sitting in a lawyer's office? The question stayed with me into the next day. When I walked into Jonathan's office again, he had the documents neatly arranged and ready to sign. He went through each page with me slowly, making sure I understood every clause, every transfer, every legal protection built into the trust. "This is one of the most airtight documents I've ever seen," he said. "Your grandparents thought through everything. They wanted you to be unshakable." I nodded, swallowing hard. "And they wanted my parents nowhere near it." "Correct. They were explicit. If your parents attempted to interfere, the trust would freeze. If they tried to claim involvement, everything would default to you. They cannot contest this." For the first time, I felt a sense of safety in a way I never felt growing up. When I signed the final document, a quiet shift happened inside me. No applause, no dramatic music, just the steady certainty of a future I now owned. Jonathan stood and shook my hand with genuine satisfaction. "It's official," he said. "The full trust transfers to you within 72 hours. You will receive account access, keys, deeds, and everything else as soon as the system updates." Walking out of the building, I felt taller than I had in years, not because of the money, but because of the truth. The truth that my grandparents believed in me. The truth that my parents tried to erase something that didn't belong to them. On the drive home, I passed the neighborhood where I grew up. I hadn't planned to, but my hands turned the wheel before my brain caught up. I parked down the street from my parents' house and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. It hit me that I no longer felt like a child who needed their approval. I didn't need anything from them. Not love, not validation, not explanations. But answers? Yes, I wanted those. I walked up the driveway, each step steady and deliberate. I rang the bell. My mom answered, her expression instantly shifting to irritation. "Eric, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to both of you," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. My dad appeared in the hallway, brows knit. "This better not be about that dinner. You overreacted." Typical, always rewriting reality to suit their narrative. I stepped inside, uninvited but unhindered. "I met with a lawyer," I said, turning to face them both. "Jonathan Hale." My mom stiffened, not a flinch, more like a jolt of fear. My dad's eyes narrowed. "Why would you meet with him?" my dad asked too quickly. "He contacted me," I said, "about a trust, one my grandparents left for me in 1984. Silence, thick, suffocating silence. My mom swallowed hard. My dad's jaw tightened. Their eyes flickered with something I had never seen before. Guilt. You must be mistaken," my mom said. "There was no trust." "There was," I answered. "And you knew. You asked the lawyer about it years ago." My dad's voice rose. "That's not true. Don't lie," I cut in, louder than I intended. "Not now. Not when I've seen the letters, the documents, the instructions. They wanted me protected from you." My mom stepped back like I'd slapped her. My dad shifted from denial to anger, but beneath it was panic. "You weren't ready for something like that," he snapped. "We would have helped you manage it." "No," I said. "You would have taken it. You would have twisted it the same way you twisted everything else about me." They didn't deny it. I let the silence sit between us, heavy and exposing. "I signed the papers," I said finally. "The trust is active. Everything transfers to me this week." Their faces drained of color. Not because they wanted me to have nothing, but because they couldn't have what they tried to find. I walked to the door and opened it. "I'm done being your disappointment," I said quietly. "You don't get to define me anymore." And for the first time in my life, I meant it. I drove home from my parents' house without looking back. For years, walking away from them felt like betrayal. Now it felt like breathing for the first time. I kept replaying their faces in my mind, the shock, the guilt, the fear. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing control. 3 days later, Jonathan called. "Everything's officially transferred," he said. "You now have full authority over all assets. I'll send digital access, but I'd like you to come in to collect the remaining items in person." I agreed. When I arrived, he handed me a small black box, a set of keys, and a folder thicker than anything I'd seen so far. "These," he said, tapping the box, "are safety deposit keys. Your grandparents stored personal items for you. Letters, documents, things they wanted you to have only after the trust activated." My throat tightened. Every day since learning about the trust, I'd uncovered another layer of who they were. Thoughtful, protective, quietly strategic. They had understood my parents better than I ever had. The safety deposit box was inside a quiet bank branch across town. The manager escorted me to a private room and set the metal container in front of me. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for the weight of old memories. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them, some addressed in my grandmother's handwriting, others in my grandfather's blocky print. The earliest was dated the year I was born. The latest was from just before they died. I opened one at random. "Eric, you won't understand this yet, but one day you will stand on your own feet in ways your parents never believed you could. We are building this trust so you will never be forced to depend on anyone who doesn't value you." I sat there for a long time, reading letter after letter. Little pieces of love preserved across time. They wrote about my first steps, my first words, small moments from my childhood I barely remembered. They wrote about my parents too, but in careful, protective terms. They never insulted them. They simply acknowledged the truth with a painful kind of gentleness. "Your parents love Tyler for who he is, but they do not see you. One day they will. On that day, we want you to have something that is yours alone." By the time I closed the box again, my eyes were burning. Not from sadness, but from clarity. My grandparents didn't just leave me money. They left me proof that I mattered to someone long before I ever mattered to myself. Later that week, Jonathan emailed me a detailed overview of the trust's properties. One note stood out: a parcel of land, 27 acres on the edge of town, that had been undervalued for decades but was now prime real estate. Developers had been reaching out for months. I scheduled a meeting with the development company. When I arrived, the executives shook my hand with the kind of respect no one in my family had ever shown me. They explained their proposed project, a mixed-use space that would bring in significant returns. The numbers were staggering. At the end of the meeting, the lead executive smiled. "We've been trying to contact the original owners for months. We had no idea the land belonged to a trust." "It belongs to me now," I said, steady and certain. He nodded. "Then you're the person we'll be working with." Walking out of that building, carrying a folder full of projected profits and development plans, I realized something. The world was finally responding to me differently. Not because I was suddenly wealthy, but because I was finally behaving like someone who deserved to be at the table. The shift became even more obvious when my parents reached out. The first message came from my mom. "We need to talk, it's important." I ignored it. Then my dad called. I let it ring. Finally, Tyler sent a text. "What did you do? Why are Mom and Dad freaking out?" I didn't respond. For years, they treated me like I was disposable. Now they wanted information, access, a way back in. I wasn't cruel enough to enjoy their panic, but I wasn't naive enough to open the door for them either. 2 days later, they showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hesitated before answering the door, but something in me wanted to face them head on. My dad spoke first. "We heard about the trust being transferred." So Jonathan had told them. Not the details, he legally couldn't, but enough for them to understand the truth. My mom stepped forward. "Eric, we just want to help. This is a lot for one person." "No," I said. "You want access, you want influence. You're not here for me." My dad's jaw tightened. "We're your parents. You owe us respect." That word, "owe," hit me wrong. "I don't owe you anything," I said quietly. "Not my time, not my trust, and definitely not the future you tried to hide." My mom's eyes filled with tears. Real or not, I couldn't tell. "We were trying to protect you. You wouldn't have known what to do with all this back then." "And now?" I asked. "Now that it's too late for you to take it?" Neither of them answered. For the first time, I saw them for what they were. People who made choices out of selfishness, not malice. But selfishness can cut just as deep. "I'm not shutting you out," I said. "But things aren't going to be the same anymore. I'm not the disappointment you built your life around. You can't treat me like that and expect me to come running when it benefits you." My dad opened his mouth to argue, but my mom placed a hand on his arm. They left without saying goodbye. I closed the door gently, not with anger but with finality. Later that night, I received an email from Jonathan. He had uncovered something else, 2 attempted requests from my parents to have the trust reviewed decades ago. They hadn't been satisfied with being in the dark. They had actively tried to find a way in. But the trust held firm, because it was never meant for them. It was meant for me, and for the first time in my life, I understood just how much power there is in being given something that others tried desperately to control, but couldn't. I wasn't done yet, not even close. There was still one more confrontation waiting, one more shift that would change the balance permanently. And I was finally ready for it. A week after my parents showed up at my apartment, Jonathan called again. His voice had that same cautious tone I'd heard the first day we met. "Eric, there's one more matter you should be aware of," he said. "It concerns the board overseeing your grandparents' old community foundation. Your parents have been attempting to present Tyler as the family's representative in your place." I closed my eyes slowly. Of course they had. "What does that mean?" I asked. "The foundation manages several grants and charity programs your grandparents supported for decades. Because the trust is now in your name, you automatically inherit the voting position they once held. That gives you substantial influence, more than your parents expected." "And they're trying to bypass me." "Yes," he said, "but they can't, not legally. The board has requested your presence at a meeting to finalize the transition." The meeting was set for Friday. Walking in, I saw my parents sitting near the front, talking to a board member. Tyler was beside them, dressed like he was attending a gala instead of a community foundation meeting. The moment they saw me, their expressions shifted. Shock first, then something closer to dread. A woman in her 50s stood and offered her hand. "You must be Eric. Thank you for joining us." "Of course," I said, returning the handshake. She guided me to the front. My parents stared at me, unsure whether to speak. Tyler looked annoyed, like he'd been cast in the wrong role at the last minute. "We've reviewed the trust's terms," the woman said once the meeting started. "Your grandparents were very clear. Their voting seat transfers directly to you upon activation of the trust." She turned to my parents. "We appreciate your involvement, but this matter is closed." My mom's face collapsed in slow motion. My dad looked like he wanted to protest, but the board had already moved on. As the meeting continued, I learned more about the foundation than I ever knew growing up. My grandparents weren't just donors, they were anchors. Their work supported schools, food programs, small businesses, and medical initiatives. Sitting in that room, listening to how much they'd shaped the community, I realized how large their presence had been, just not in the world my parents lived in. When the meeting ended, the board members thanked me individually. One woman said, "Your grandparents believed you'd carry this forward with integrity. We're glad to finally meet you." Integrity, a word my parents had never attached to me. My parents waited until the room emptied, then hurried over. My mom started first. "Eric, you could have told us you were coming." "I didn't need your permission," I said. My dad's voice cracked slightly. "That seat was supposed to stay in the family." "It did stay in the family," I said, "just not the branch you wanted." Tyler rolled his eyes. "So what? You're suddenly a big deal because of some charity board?" He still didn't get it. None of them did. This wasn't about money or status. It was about legacy, something my grandparents trusted me with, not them. I took a slow breath. "I'm not here to fight, but I'm done pretending we're the same family we used to be." My mom reached for my arm. "We just want to fix things." "No," I said gently, stepping back. "You want access. You want to rewrite the past. But you can't. I know what you did. I know what you tried to hide." The truth hung in the air, heavy and final. For a moment, none of them spoke. My parents looked smaller somehow, as if the truth had drained something out of them. Tyler looked annoyed he wasn't the center of attention. "Take care," I said finally, "all of you." Then I walked away, not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. Outside the building, the winter air bit at my face. I stood there for a moment, letting the cold settle into my lungs, clearing out whatever was left of the version of myself they'd tried to build. I wasn't their disappointment anymore. The next few weeks moved quickly. I met with financial advisors, lawyers, and the foundation board again. Opportunities unfolded in every direction, not just for wealth, but for purpose. I funded a scholarship program in my grandparents' names. I revitalized one of the trust's older properties into a community space. I started making decisions rooted in something my parents could never give me, my own worth. And then something unexpected happened. My mom sent a letter, not asking for money, not asking for influence, just apologizing. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough that it felt real. My dad reached out too, though less gracefully. Something about wanting to talk as a family. Tyler didn't contact me at all, not that I expected him to. I didn't know what to do with their messages at first. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a slow process, and I wasn't rushing it. But I also wasn't closing the door entirely, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Because for the first time in my life, the choice was mine. One evening, I sat on my new balcony overlooking the city, reading through one of my grandfather's letters again. "You will grow into the man we already see in you." I finally understood what he meant. All my life, I wanted my parents to recognize me. But I never realized I didn't need their recognition to become someone. I already was someone. My grandparents saw it, and now I finally did too. Their trust didn't just give me a future. It gave me myself, and that was worth more than every dollar they left behind. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been the overlooked one, the underestimated one, the person others dismissed, you know exactly how this feels. And maybe my story is a reminder that sometimes the world is holding something for you that the wrong people tried to keep away. Don't let them. And if you want more stories where justice finds the people who deserve it most, stick around. There's always another truth waiting to be uncovered.